latest episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the town of Miami Lakes. I'm Mayor Manny Cid, and we have an incredible guest today. We have Omar Blanco, who is the 2020 Professional Firefighter of the Year here in the state of Florida. How you doing, Omar?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and be part of your program. I think it's a phenomenal way to connect with the community. So thank you for always being the leader in that.
No, I appreciate you, and I wanted to thank some of our sponsors. We're powered by Miami Lakes AutoMall. Thank you to Fred Senra. He's a great friend. 16600 Northwest 57th Avenue here in the town of Miami Lakes. You can reach them at 305-455-3510. The car business is booming. And what do you think about this mural?
Beautiful.
Yeah?
I love it.
Local artist Grisel Gajano. She pulled this off. She is really, truly amazing. You can text her at 786-353-8608. And our film production team, the Matter Lakes Bears. These folks are amazing. If you see the product that they are producing, it is off the chain. It is remarkable. But what's pretty cool about this, it's a real live classroom. There's 90 kids in this program. You have incredible professors teaching this class. So it's giving them a leg up, not only meeting great people like you, but producing an entire show. So I really appreciate you all. So, Omar, we start off with one very important question. Is your why? Why do you do what you do, right? As kids, we always have dreams and aspirations, but why pick the career path to say, you know what, I want to be in public service. I want to be a firefighter. And I know how hard it is. I rode along with you one day, and we'll get into that in a second.
Absolutely.
But why? What's your why?
Well, I think it's all about giving back, serving. I've been that kid since I was as young as I can remember. My mom would say, somebody needed help, you'd be the first one to jump in. And I think that holds true for most of the people in public service, including yourself. I mean, we're driven, and I think listening to your last podcast with Chief George Colina, I mean, he said it. He said, our calling, it's a calling in this profession. And that's what this is all about. I mean, you're not mayor by accident sometimes. Maybe wasn't what you initially started when I see some of your fantastic GQ pictures from back in the day, which I love. But nonetheless, I tell you, it is something that I think it's in our hearts. And I could say that for my coworkers, my colleagues, my brothers and sisters in the fire service, and even those in police. We know that we were bred for that. And my why is to leave it better than I found it. And I think that in not only my community, but in the fire service and in public safety, excuse me, and in public service all around. I think a lot of what we do is to know that once we move on to the next chapter in our lives, we want to look back and say that we left our mark. And just as you're doing here in the great town of Miami Lakes, I hope to be doing the same thing in my service and every day serving this community. So.
No, talk about leaving your mark. Yesterday, you were awarded the 2020 Florida Professional Firefighter of the Year. I mean, you're talking about an award that's given by the CFO, who's a fire marshal, and the state of Florida. With some folks, not only are we one of the largest states in the union, but if Florida were a standalone country, it'd be one of the largest economies in the world. So to get that type of award, to go to Tallahassee, to bring your parents with you.
Amen.
I mean, what did that mean to you?
It's indescribable. I can't put into words the feeling. I mean, I get just thinking about it. Really, it is the most humbling yet rewarding experience of my life. To see my mom, my dad, people who have inspired me throughout my life, and my son who's 18 just graduated from high school, my daughter who just started high school, and my wife who is the foundation of everything I have in my life through her. And it was just it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I got to talk to the governor yesterday and members of the cabinet. And, it really, to me, I was a reflection of what a lot of great people do every day. And I was awarded this because of the cancer coverage bill that we were able to obtain for firefighters, which, as you know, firefighter cancer coverage was a huge win for Florida firefighters a couple of years ago. And we went up to Tallahassee and we lobbied for that. And, you might be mayor, but you're also part of the fire family. You firsthand saw what our brave men and women go through. And so to just be recognized for that was very humbling. And I think that ultimately the true essence of what was important there was that our firefighters are protected. So, if that's just a little reflection of that or just something from that, I was very honored and grateful to receive that award. So.
No, that was huge. That the cancer bill was really, really big. A good friend of mine, a firefighter, Milanes, passed away years ago from cancer. His daughter grew up with me. His son-in-law is a great friend of mine, my son's godfather. So I know the impact that had. And I remember one year that you had, when you were doing that, you had put all the uniforms of all the firefighters that passed away and the impact that had for them and how proud they were to see that happen. But it was a very, very personal impact.
Yeah, I'll tell you, and I know who you're speaking of. Obviously, the fire family is very tight. We, what we did is we took their gear, the gear that you use in fires and whatnot, and we were able to just put it on display at the Capitol. And with each sets of bunker gear, we had the person's name on it. We had their helmet. We had their boots. And it really provided a connection, I think, to legislators. When you're legislating on behalf of this town, you hear about all the different things that are going on, but to see it, feel it, and you did the same when you were rode with us on the fire truck. You got to see firsthand. There is a perspective out there of what we do, but in the real world scenarios, there's a lot of, as I like to call them, highs and lows. Very rewarding job, but also very tough job on our people and our bodies. And this was one of those things that I think Florida did the right thing in helping us, helping our members with this battle that we've taken on.
No, you're absolutely right. So Captain Blanco, I call him OB. When I first became mayor, he reaches out to me. He's like, Mayor, you got to ride with us. I need you to meet me at Station 64. So I roll up to Station 64. That's on the west side of town. It's a brand new station. And I walk in. He has a shirt for me. It says firefighter. I put it on. He had a hat. I still wear it all the time. So I'm ready to go. We start off the day pretty slow. I'll never forget that day because I remember like it was yesterday the impact it had on me. We went on 4 calls. First call was a gentleman that had fainted. We had to transport him to one of the local hospitals. And even just that experience alone, seeing how every emergency room is different and the level of service is different, that kind of opened my eyes, And then we had another call, one lady that it almost seemed like her family had abandoned her. We had to carry her down the stairs, had, feces on her and urine, but we helped them. And I remember looking at OB and I'm like, I want to talk to the family. Like, this is not the right way to take care of a loved one. And he was like, you can't do that, So those are, I could only imagine the amount of calls you go to that you want to tell folks, hey, you gotta, but that's, you know what I mean? There's a line there. So I feel you. And I remember going to the third call, and it was a senior who was having some issues. You checked up on her. She was okay. But then we get the fourth call. And this is one that really impacted me. And OB gets on the phone. We're in the battalion truck. We're heading out there. We're the first ones on the scene. OB pulls up. I open the door, and there's a human being that unfortunately had passed away from a vehicular accident. And OB jumps in like second nature, double checks, puts on I forgot the electrodes, double checks as unfortunately this gentleman had passed away. And I remember seeing that there was another gentleman who fortunately was alive, and OB checks on him, calls it in. He goes, look, there's a fatality on the scene, but there's also a trauma alert. So I'll never forget, they closed down I-75. Helicopter lands, and OB, the gentleman, we put him in the helicopter. I remember he was full of blood, and OB's like, you got to put on the helmet. I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, you're riding with him. I'm like, what? So I remember getting strapped into the helicopter, and helicopter taking off, and OB waving at me, and I'm in there with folks. We're helping out a gentleman next to me. Right. I see everything going on. we're in there. I don't even know who's in the helicopter. They don't even know who I am, you know. And the helicopter's taking off, lands at Jackson, right in the helipad. While we're getting to Jackson, I'll never forget seeing folks waiting for us on the roof at Jackson. And we land, we go in. The captain says, "Hey, you're going with me." So I remember taking the gentleman out, stretcher, going in with the doctors, going down the elevator, going into the trauma, the trauma unit. And they immediately start working on it. Nobody knows that I'm an elected official or anything. I'm in the middle of all of this, and I'm just like, man, you know, and seeing all those folks care for people that they don't even know. Correct. You know, like it's second nature. They don't have no idea who this gentleman is. Yet they're doing everything in their power, from the firefighters that responded for OB that was there first to the nurses and doctors at Jackson. They are doing everything to make sure that this gentleman survives and makes it home. And I remember seeing that and just sitting back, and I was like, wow. And I'm watching this entire thing. We leave, we get back on the helicopter, fly back to Opalaca. Obi is waiting for me there, and jump in the battalion truck, and Obi's like, you know, we got to have lunch. And I'm like, what do you mean? I like, my heart is racing. You know what I mean? Like, everything that I just experienced, you know, was so impactful. Like, I'll sit down with you guys, but I remember sitting down during lunch, and Obi's like, "What do you want to eat?" I was like, "I can't eat." You know, like he's eating, but we're talking that whole entire time, and then that's when I realized, if I just experienced that, and I'll never forget that day. That was almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
I'll never forget that day. Imagine doing that every single day, caring for people, going above and beyond, touching blood, seeing things, people that you don't even know. So that I got to give you kudos for that, because that experience has changed my perspective overall of the fire profession, you know, because it's not only fighting fires, it's saving people's lives every day, and people that you have no idea who they are. Right. You're touching their blood, you're carrying them, you're taking care of them, you know, you're going into these things, but at the end of the day, you guys are human beings. You got to eat, you got to take care of yourselves, you got to, you know, and I think that transition, when I saw that myself, I was like, whoa. So just wanted to, again, thank you for that.
No, of course. And if I could say kudos to you, you know, I think it's important in your role in government is that you understand what all the departments that serve your community do. And, you know, you started off the day being a professional, you know, asking the right questions. You were very intrigued, which I loved about the beginning. And then you sounded like a little kid that had just seen, wow, I can't believe it. And then, you know, it was kind of a mute. I laugh, and, you know, I chuckled a little bit when you said you got in the helicopter, because when you got in the helicopter, your eyes were like this big. And I was just like, you know, I wanted you to feel what it was that our guys feel. And believe it or not, you know, these people are selfless. They all they care about is providing safety and public safety and saving lives. And you'd be surprised the impact. Even 5 days today, people are still talking about your ride in Miami Lakes and how you took time to care about what they do in the community. And that, you know, is very impactful to those guys who, you know, lay it all on the line. You know, there's one thing sometimes they're concerned about, hey, listen, what happens if I die on the job? What happens for my family? And it's just, it shows a level of empathy by the elected officials when they say, yeah, I want to understand it from your level. And like your experience, we've been fortunate to have other elected officials have that experience. But when you got back to Opalaca that we met you, you know, you went from asking questions to, we couldn't get you to stop talking. You had all these questions like, hey, blah, 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 blah. And it was, even Bianca, who was with us, was like, wow, what a difference. And I'm like, he finally understood the job like a firefighter. He stepped into a different role. And I think that's a very courageous thing to do as an elected official, more importantly. And shows your true leadership strengths for this community. So thank you. And hey, I hope we'll do it again sometime. You know, I'd love to have you back on a reunion.
No, and as you can see, I haven't forgotten that entire time. And one thing you hit upon is empathy, and something that happened recently in our community that's impacted every single person is Surfside. What happened, the terrible event that happened tragedy that happened in Surfside. Almost everybody is some way or somehow. Miami, while we're a big metropolitan area where almost every single one of us were almost all connected some way, somehow.
Absolutely.
So even myself, I had been in that building previously. I had a friend of mine that owned a unit there many years ago, and I remember him calling me. He's like, "Man, that's where I owned a unit," and he in the past he had sold it several years back, and I remember that, not thinking back and just seeing that on TV. You were there every day.
Yeah.
You were there. We talked on the phone a couple times, but you were there every day. So talking about empathy, I want to make sure that the folks, what they're going to be watching the podcast, the kids, seeing it through your eyes,
Right.
seeing it through your eyes when you were there. So if you can talk to us about that.
Well, I got there the day of, right? So it happened, I think, around 2 a.m, and I was on shift. So by the time we got there, it was a little later in the afternoon. And we didn't leave there. We were there for 4 weeks straight. I left a little bit before because we were shifting operational modes per se. But I will tell you, the experience we have in Miami-Dade Fire Rescue is world renowned. I mean, we've been to Haiti, we've been to Oklahoma City, we've been to 9/11. A lot of expertise in the search and rescue, but it happened in our own backyard. It adds another level of a deeper connection, if that's even possible. And for us, it was that when we're focused on the job, we're hurting because we know it's in our community. Because as you know, there was a firefighter from another department at the city whose daughter was in the rubble, and so we knew this. It wasn't necessarily out there out of respect for him. Later on, it came to be known, but he was there digging for his daughter, and so it's a tough connection that we have with the community. We listen to the stories of the families. The first days, you could hear the families' cries from across the street while we're trying to dig through this. Was a massive pile. So, I had the pleasure of walking many of our elected officials through the pile, and their concerns were about the not only the physical health of our firefighters, but the mental health. And so much so that Casey DeSantis, the governor's wife, First Lady of Florida, took an initiative in that aspect, because I do believe that some of the folks experienced some very difficult times. And the memorial wall that was built just west of the collapse site was something that one of our own guys, Joey Bigling, he's on our department. He grew up in Surfside, and he wrote a beautiful piece on one of our shirts, and it just basically said, "We know you're hurting, we're hurting, we just can't show it yet." And that defined the entire operation. We had guys that would come back and were just shaken up, and we'd have to, talk about it and get it off. But it becomes a very it's you always see it when you see an accident, or police or a firefighter or a paramedic jump to action and they're working the scene, and we're very robotic, and I say we're very procedural, right? We're trained to do this. So we train every day to do what we might do once every other day, or maybe you'll only see us do once in your lifetime. But the point is, we're very focused. When we're done with that adrenaline rush of saving that life, we then take a step back, and that's when it hits us. And when it hits us like it hits any human being. We're very compassionate individuals. We care about this community. We care about every life, and one of the beautiful things about our profession is we serve everybody in this community. When we get a 911 call, it could be a month-old child, a 90-year-old person, it could be anyone. And I believe the events of Surfside really became an experience that, while we thought we had seen it all, we now learned that we were taken aback by the impact it had on us in a department, but how much we did a phenomenal job. Our mayor did a phenomenal job. Our municipalities did a fantastic job providing support. I know you were very involved in helping, and we came together as a community. If there was anything out of a tragic incident that was beautiful, was the amount of cooperation and collaboration between everybody. It was all about taking care of the victims and their families, and doing that. And in our world, that's the healing to the tough part, is that we see some of the most beautiful things during the most difficult times. And so, I always stress to everyone, like life is unpredictable. We forget it because we might have not had a tragic event in the last so many years, and God bless you for that. But in our life, we see it every day, and we have a different appreciation for what it is that happens when you least expect it. I tell a quick story all the time. We'll go down to the beach, and we'll be with families, and there'll be tons of families out there. Everybody will be having a great time. I'll be the one taking a head count. Where are the kids? Who's in the water? Who's not in the water? And it's kind of how we're programmed. Unfortunately, we've been to the incident where when you least expect it, something tragic happens. And I think it, for me, it's I wouldn't want to do anything else, Manny, but serve. And to have done it at this capacity to me is a blessing, and I'm grateful to God for the opportunity to do so.
No, and I appreciate you sharing that insight on Surfside, and it touches upon something else. You talked about the cancer bill that you had helped pass in the legislature, and now the events in Surfside, but mental health, right? It's for many in our society, in our community, it's a stigma. Yep. People don't want to talk about it. And you see a firefighter, you usually think of, somebody who's very tough-skinned, right. The men and women in uniform, but the reality is you're human beings, right. So talk to us about the mental health aspect of the everyday job, because I think about it, that those events, that ride along, those 4 calls, I'll never forget. Right. So I could only imagine that impact, going through those calls.
I think every firefighter, every police officers, and there's so many. I know while we're two separate professions, I see the first responder community in this aspect and in many aspects as one. But I can tell you, as a firefighter, when you drive down the street, the accident, the person who died in this corner, when you were on that, you don't forget either. But what's interesting is that there has been, unfortunately, due to the losses of life with PTSD-related injuries, there's been a focus on, why is this happening? One of the things that I find very comforting is that there has been no missed opportunities. From local elected officials to state to federal government has said, hey, this is something we want to address. Our own IAFF has taken the initiative. And I'll tell you a story that took me back a little bit, and I didn't understand it. We started to get dogs for our PTSD, to help us with PTSD. And I thought, I'm a dog lover, so I love dogs, but I didn't get the correlation. I walked into a station one day where the crews answered a call to an infant who had died. And it was a very tragic call. It was a difficult situation. And these were guys that have been on 20 years, some 20 years, some 10, some recent, but the majority were senior firefighters, as we call them. And, they came in to talk to make sure everything's okay. And one of the senior guys told me, what did it for me, man? The dog. And I was like, the dog? He's like, man, I started petting the dog, and I felt a little sense of relief from what I had experienced. And, there's experts out there and that are put these programs together. So I think little by little, even us as those that, us in the fire service that have never really thought of this as an issue, because I've seen my tragic calls, but, my dad is a physician. My stepmother's a nurse, and, I kind of learned early on that you have to be able to keep separation. You obviously, your heart bleeds for these folks and whatnot, but you can finish a tough call and go to the next call. You still got to get lunch, because if you don't eat, you may not eat. Into your story, but I really think that I'm grateful that we have this, that we're getting this type of support from our community. So.
No, I appreciate you sharing that, Omar. I know as we head towards the end of the podcast, we kind of flip the script. We let you ask some questions. But before we get there, I don't know if our producers or director, anybody got any question you want to ask?
Good.
I see a hand up back there.
I like it. It's serious, though.
Quick question. So the Searchside scenario, right? Mm-hmm. The Searchside scenario took place, obviously a tragic event, but it took place in the middle of a pandemic as well.
A good point. Excellent point.
In the middle of a pandemic. And people in your position and people in the hospitals and stuff like that, they were run thin as it is.
Yes.
And now you have this to respond to.
Right.
How did you guys deal with that?
Thank you for asking that question. When I was preparing for this, not preparing, I really just thinking about this. I wanted to talk about this, so I'm glad you brought it up. I believe this happened on a Thursday. we were wrapping up. We've been all COVID, from testing to helping support a lot of the things going on in Dade County. The mayor did a great job with the initiation of making sure we tested, we vaccinated, and we were involved in helping that portion of it. Our fire chief, who is on his, I think now just starting his second year, the day he came on, COVID blew up. That week that the collapse happened was the week we were wrapping up an operation to hand over to somebody else who was going to take over that. And we finally go, okay, a little relief, because we're still operating a fire service department and helping with COVID. I mean, our chief has done, and our administration, phenomenal job. And I don't need to tell you, this, done a phenomenal job balancing the two. It's kind of what we do. We make things work. And the day that it was wrapping up was the day Surfside happened. And we were just like, my first thoughts were like, man, my poor chief. I mean, this is a huge thing, and much to his credit, he sat down, he put a team together, and they did a phenomenal job. I was fortunate to be part of that, but I think that's the thing. What comes down to it at the end of the day is we find a way to get through it, and that's really what's the resiliency, not only the fire service, but as a community. Whatever comes up, we'll have to find a way, and I think that's, in truth, the beauty of human nature, and what we thrive for. Our motto is always ready, proud to serve. So no matter the circumstances, we'll all be ready and proud to serve. I got out of Surfside. I had a couple weeks, got things going, and then we had to head up to Mississippi. I went up to Mississippi with our task force to help over there in Louisiana for some of the hurricane efforts. So it's an ongoing thing, but it's we take a lot of pride in doing our job. So thank you for asking that question.
Always ready, proud to serve. I know on your way here you had a call too, so we appreciate you taking the time. A couple minutes left. Any questions you got for me? I know we flipped the script. Anything you want to throw this way?
I always ask everybody the same question. You're a guy who cares about your community. What inspired you to run was a love for leaving it better than you found it.
100%.
But the person who came into office is much different than the person who's in office today. What is one thing that you see different, both from a positive or a challenge, from a positive perspective, but yet also from a challenging perspective? Because one day someone's going to come behind you, and you're going to say to them, "Hey, man, I think." And it happens to me. I was president of the firefighters for many years, and it's always different when you're sitting in the hot seat and you're doing these things. What's one thing, both on the positive side, that you would say that you were pleasantly surprised that really changed your perspective? And what's one thing that you were totally wrong about that you're like, wow, and you would give that advice to an oncoming?
Yeah, no. So you're absolutely right. I didn't inherit the organization a lot better than what we have it today. So it took a lot of work, but it also, you got to be willing to sometimes not be the one, even though you did the initiative, you got things done, but you got to let other folks to get the credit sometimes. I think as leaders, once you're okay with that, your organization really starts getting better. I think in public service, especially with term limits, people want to get things done so fast. Hey, I want to get these initiatives done. I want to get these things done. Let's get this done. But I think there's more of a thoughtfulness that have come into place, 5 years later, where I'm a little bit less, hey, let's get it. No. Let's be a little bit more methodical and thoughtful. The same way I even, one big change for me, the folks that I surround myself with. For a long time, I was like a Major League Baseball scout where I said, hey, I need the most talent around me. Now, I'm like, yeah, talent's important. But that sets the floor. The ceiling, and Bill Belichick has been successful because of this, is your character. So I've really tried to focus more, bringing in folks around me that are high character, right? So those are the perspectives that have really helped me, that I've tried to teach even the council members now, where I'm like, look, be a bit more thoughtful of other folks around you. Be a bit more empathetic. There's not everybody. Some people in elected office, all they want is, somebody, to give them a clap and, clap them up or whatever. So I think once we do that, the team becomes that much more comfortable and successful. And because a lot, as mayor, and I'm sure it happened to you when you were the union chief, and as a captain now with a high profile and getting the award, there's a lot of folks that are like, oh man, but what about me? So I go out of my way sometimes to like I do, for example, one thing I do as mayor, I have sunshine meetings with each council member.
Right.
And I asked them, what's important for you?
Right.
What do you want to see done in your 4 years in office? So my goal, if they mention one thing, is help them with that. We had a council member last year that was like, I want to fix all the little things. I want to fix all the cul-de-sacs. I want to do it. And I was like, all right, look at this in the budget. Find the money. So it kind of, although, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So, now they have a feeling that they're part of the team. They're part of the decision-making process. Good. Now everybody's kind of, so those two things, surround yourself with high character folks, obviously high skill set, but look at their character too, and be very thoughtful and empathetic of everybody around you. And, things will...
There's always a process to things, right? Everybody... Sometimes we come in and we can't do it alone. Nobody does it. The award I got, I never got alone. I could sit here and spend the next half hour telling you about all the great people who made it possible, who were there, who worked hard. But I will tell you that those two answers were probably the best answers. You talk about character, Martin Luther King. Tell me about the content of your character. That is something we preach a lot in the fire service. But certainly wise words from a man who has transitioned in his leadership. So I commend you for that. And, I know the Miami Lakers that are watching and people outside know that they're blessed to have you. So God bless you and your family, because I know the sacrifice is not just yours. It's a family thing. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, Omar. So that's Captain Omar Blanco. We appreciate you. So know that when you call 911, that one of the folks that's out there coordinating all this, making sure that you are taken care of, is Captain Omar Blanco, who just got awarded the 2020 Professional Firefighter of the Year Award here in the state of Florida. Good to have you, Omar.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
We really, really appreciate you, and keep up the great work in our community.
Thank you. You do the same. Great job, guys. I applaud you. Fantastic work.
We'll see you next week on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to comment, share our podcast, and also subscribe. If you do that, we'll make sure we shout you out at the end of every single episode. We'll see you next week.